Have you ever wondered why a bodybuilder's muscles expand, or thought about the process behind a tumor's formation? It all comes down to our cells' extraordinary capacity to adapt and proliferate. Join me as we explore the process of cellular adaptations, a mind-blowing phenomena, yet it's transpiring right inside us at this very moment. The concept of cellular adaptations of growth pertain to the extraordinary methods by which our body's cells react to and cope with changes in the environment. These adaptations are pivotal in maintaining our health and ensuring our bodies can handle various challenges. Hence, our cells can adjust by altering their size, quantity, and type, resulting in responses like atrophy, hypertrophy, hyperplasia, metaplasia, and dysplasia. Firstly, we have atrophy. Picture your cells doing a bit of decluttering. Atrophy is when a cell diminishes in size due to a decrease in workload or nutrients. Consider what happens when a muscle that's not exercised. It shrinks and weakens, discarding unnecessary components. This is a natural process that enhances the body's efficiency. Various organs and tissues can undergo atrophy. If you injure yourself or wear a cast on your arm, the muscle in that arm will undergo atrophy as they aren't being exercised. This demonstrates why physical therapy and regular movements are crucial during recovery. As we age, certain organs like the thymus gland might undergo atrophy as their functions evolve or diminish over time. This cellular adaptation occurs when a cell is subject to decreased work demands or adverse environmental conditions. It's your body's strategy of conserving energy and resources when not needed. Cells that are atrophied reduce their oxygen consumption and other cellular functions by decreasing the number and size of their organelles and other structures. Atrophy can be broadly classified into 5 main causes: disuse, neural disconnections, absence of endocrine stimulation, poor nutrition, ischemia, or reduced blood flow. When skeletal muscles aren't used, disuse atrophy sets in. This type of atrophy is reversible. Muscles regain their size once the cast is taken off and the limb is used again. Atrophy due to loss of neural connections specifically affects muscles of paralyzed limbs and is a subset of disuse atrophy. The absence of endocrine signals can also lead to a type of disuse atrophy. For instance, during menopause in women, the drop in estrogen levels causes atropic alterations in the reproductive organs. Lastly, when faced with insufficient nutrition or blood supply, cells reduce their size and energy consumption to survive. It's noteworthy that atrophy can manifest both reversibly and irreversibly. Reversible atrophy transpires when the cells are stimulated and nourished adequately, reinstating their normal size and function. However, if the root cause of atrophy continues, it could lead to irreversible changes, and the affected cells might die or sustain permanent damage. Now visualize those muscular bodybuilders you may have seen at the gym. Hypertrophy is an adaptive change that takes place when a cell enlarges and strengthens in response to increased demand or stress. It's as if your cell is hitting the gym and getting all bulked up. When you exercise, the muscles require more energy and the cells react by growing larger to manage the load. This adaptation is a commendable way for your body to deal with increased demands. One of the most common reasons for cellular hypertrophy is an increased workload. For example, the heart muscle cells can enlarge in response to conditions that increase the workload of the heart, such as hypertension or valve diseases. This is an attempt by the heart to pump blood more efficiently against an increased resistance. Resistance training or weightlifting can cause skeletal muscles to increase in size. This is a response to the increased workload and is a way for muscles to generate more force. Hormonal stimulation can also stimulate certain cells to grow in size. For instance, during pregnancy, the uterus enlarges due to hypertrophy of the smooth muscle cells, driven in part by hormones like estrogen and progesterone. Compensatory hypertrophy is a type of hypertrophy that occurs if part of an organ is damaged or removed. The remaining cells might undergo hypertrophy to compensate for the loss. Some cells may undergo hypertrophy in response to cellular stress or injury. This can be seen in certain pathological conditions. Cells can also enlarge to meet increased metabolic or systemic demands. Chronic inflammatory conditions can also sometimes lead to hypertrophy of the affected cells or tissues. Hypertrophy can be both physiological and pathological. Physiological hypertrophy involves an increase in individual cell size, leading to the enlargement of the affected organ or tissue. In pathological hypertrophy, the cells enlarge to compensate for the increased workload. However, unlike physiologic hypertrophy, these changes might not be beneficial and can lead to functional impairments. Addressing the underlying cause of pathologic hypertrophy is essential to prevent further complications. It's important to note that while hypertrophy involves an increase in cell size, it's different than hyperplasia, which is an increase in cell number. Both processes can occur simultaneously in some conditions. Hyperplasia is a growth adaptation that could be described as a cellular multiplier. It's like pressing fast forward on cell division when your body requires more of something. Hyperplasia is like employing more hands to complete a task swiftly. This process increases the number of cells in an organ or tissue. So hyperplasia is all about creating more of what you need. Hyperplasia is primarily a physiologic response to meet the body's needs. During the menstrual cycle, the uterus lining undergoes hyperplasia to prepare for a possible pregnancy. Similarly, during liver regeneration after injury or partial removal, the remaining liver cells undergo hyperplasia to restore normal function. The less common, non-physiologic types of hyperplasia are usually due to excessive hormonal stimulation or the effects of growth factors on target tissues. Skin warts are an example of hyperplasia caused by growth factors produced by certain viruses, such as papillomavirus. Not all hyperplasia is beneficial, and it can sometimes be associated with an increased risk of developing cancer. Therefore, understanding the context and the underlying cause of hyperplasia is key in determining the appropriate management. Metaplasia is an intriguing adaptation where one mature cell type is replaced by another mature cell type. This change typically happens in response to chronic irritation or inflammation. For example, in smokers, the normal ciliated columnar epithelial lining of the respiratory tract might undergo metaplasia, transforming into squamous cells that are more resistant to the harmful effects of smoke. Metaplasia is the cell's version of a chameleon. It happens when your body needs to change the type of cells in a certain tissue to better adapt to the situation. It's like exchanging a sensitive cell for a sturdier one. While metaplasia assists the body in adaptation, it's crucial to remember that not all cells can undergo this metaplastic change. Though metaplasia can be a protective mechanism, enabling the cells to withstand adverse conditions better, it can also have disadvantages. The newly formed cell type might not perform its function as efficiently as the original cells. Additionally, metaplasia can heighten the risk for developing further complications, such as progressing to dysplasia or even cancer. Finally, we check out dysplasia, the cell with identity confusion. When cells lose sight of their purpose or mission, things can become somewhat chaotic. Dysplasia occurs when cells undergo abnormal changes in size, shape, or organization. It's like a disorganized team working towards a goal, but not quite hitting the mark. Dysplasia can sometimes lead to more serious problems, so it's essential to monitor it and intervene if necessary. Dysplasia is often considered a precancerous condition, as it can be a precursor to the development of cancer if not addressed. Dysplasia is categorized as mild, moderate, or severe, depending on the extent of abnormal changes. Mild dysplasia involves only minor abnormalities and may have a lower risk of progressing to cancer. However, moderate and severe dysplasia pose a higher risk and prompt medical intervention is crucial. There you have it, the fascinating world of cellular adaptation. Remember, while these adaptations can be a response to stress or damage, they are not necessarily bad. They're usually our body's attempt to protect itself and maintain normal functioning. But sometimes they can be a sign of a disease or condition that needs medical attention. If you like this video, don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of my new videos.